Today on Locked On Red Wings, can Detroit make the big swing while also addressing their other deficiencies in one offseason? We look at my wish list, and Scotty's going in blind.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley, and with a week to go to the draft and free agency, we have a fun one for you. We're going to try and get as many fun ones in here before we get to the real news as we can. We got the Hall of Fame tomorrow, so that'll be hopefully fun. More than likely, probably going to be a little bit frustrating based on recent trends. But today, Scotty, I wanted to do a kind of like a wish list. Like, we've talked a lot about players who might be hitting free agency, players who might be hitting the tree.
Say what you actually wanted to do first, and then what it kind of devolved into.
No, yeah, yes, I'm getting to that. So it's a wish list today. I went on Puckpedia, and I initially was like, let's try and make a realistic-ish scenario where the Red Wings could, result in certain players and try to make the roster better.
Yeah,
but,
a realistic offseason. Yeah,
a realistic offseason where you don't get everything you want. And then I realized halfway through that I wasn't having fun, and so I decided, never mind, let's do one where they get everything that I want. And I realized that it's really hard to make that happen. So full disclaimer, I do not expect...
You're high maintenance.
I do not expect the Red Wings to get every single one of these moves, but I decided let's have fun with it because you know what? We're here to have fun. And so you're going to see a lot of names we've talked about this offseason. Let's get right to it, Scotty. I think the first move that I had that you have to have in every single one of these is you got to sign your RFAs. And I signed Albert Johansson and Elmer Soderblom to 1 year, $1 million each. You'll notice there's not a name I said there. But Albert Johansson and Elmer Soderblom to 1 year, $1 million each. Now, that could go one of two ways. I've seen people go 2 years, 1.5. I've seen people go, I think, Prashant Iyer. If you want a more realistic, by the way, outline of how this offseason could go, check out Prashant Iyer's If I Were Steve Yzerman. Way better at this than I am.
It's also like an annual thing and is one of the coolest articles every summer.
And the deep dive into analytics is crazy. He's so smart. And he had those two guys at like 1 year, $900,000. So I was like, I'm going to split the difference. 1 year, $1 million. It's nice and simple. Nice round number to keep the cap nice and tidy there. Pretty simple, right? No complaints there. Signing Soderblom and Ajo to 1x1 RFAs. Okay. Well, then we move on. We re-signed Patrick Kane, which still has not happened, is presumably going to happen, but just like last year, it's probably going to go down to the midnight hour the day before the free agency opens. I had them signing him at $1x4 million. The same deal he signed this last year, incentive-laden bonus. I thought his contract, based on his production, kind of met what was expected of him, so I initially thought he would rise to $4.3 million to reflect the cap rising, same percentage of the cap. Projections had him at $1x3 million. So again, I was like, you know what? Keep it simple. 1x4, same deal he was on last year, because I could see him going somewhere in between those two. Any complaints with re-signing Patrick Kane to play in the second line?
No, not at all. I think the contract structure is going to be interesting. I almost wonder if they maybe lowball him AAV-wise and then just give him crazy bonuses. We saw a kind of like something-ish like that last summer, but I don't know. If they truly want to add top 6, top 4 talent,
can't give them too much.
They're going to have to kind of penny pinch a little bit, and I wonder if that's maybe at the expense of some guaranteed money for Kane. But you can make, you play 10 games, you get $1 million. Like you can make the bonuses, pretty lenient if you want, I guess. And
keeping his base salary the same actually means he's making less money percentage of the cap wise, that is, because the cap's rising. And if you make it into bonuses, you get the overages if you go over. You have the ability to put that against next year's cap. We had a little bit of that from this year. A little overage went onto this year's cap instead. So you have the ability to pay him a little bit more later rather than now, giving you still more money to spend in free agency. And then the next move is, Scotty, another no-brainer. Pretty chalk so far in buying out Justin Holl. Somebody we talked a lot about just a couple days ago. You have the buyout window lasts until the 30th. That is on Monday. So you have until next Monday to buy out Justin Holl in the first window. Now, second windows can open based on certain circumstances, but this is your window right now to buy out Justin Holl if you want. You're going to save over $2 million on the cap this offseason if you buy out Justin Holl and owe just a little over $1 million next year. He's a sheltered third-pair defenseman who's just okay when you give him the most sheltered minutes in the NHL. I think it's a no-brainer to get rid of Justin Holl.
I would agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about that, last week, how it just mathematically, like it kind of just makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Unless you can find a trade partner, which you won't. So,
right.
Yeah,
and in reality, this is my third step, but buying out Holl should probably be your first step because you have time to sign your RFAs because they're not going anywhere.
If you're going true chronological, sure,
right?
But
right.
Yeah.
But this is where things start to pick up because with those moves, the Red Wings have $17 million in cap space, $17.6 million in cap space based on my math. So give or take $3 million because I'm terrible at math.
Give or take like 10 mil with Brian.
Give or take a bottom six player or two based on my math. No, I'm just kidding. But $17.6 million left after re-signing Kane, re-signing Ajo, re-signing Elmer Soderblom, and buying out Justin Holl. This is where the big swing comes in, Scotty. My first move is trading for Jason Robertson, who we've talked about on end. Red Wings need to make a big swing. This guy's 25 years old. He's got 1 year left at $7.75 million. He's had back-to-back 80-point seasons. He's had a 100-point season. He's had 2 40-goal seasons. He's a top-line shooter. His playoff production is what his playoff production is. I'll worry about that when we make the playoffs.
Let's get there first. Yeah.
Right. My trade package for Jason Robertson, apologies, is trading the Nate Danielson, your 2025 first-round pick, because your 2025 first-round pick has way more value than either of the firsts that they gave up for Mikko Rantanen, and your 2025 third-round pick that originally belonged to the New York Rangers, because you have 2 third-round picks. That is my package to Jason Robertson. Based on a lot of the packages that have been flying around social media, it's pretty in line with a lot of them. I think that is, at least as a base, can get the conversation flowing. It might take a little tweaking. I'm not saying I'm some trade genius, but getting Jason Robertson with one year left at what, $7.8 million, $7.75 million immediately makes your top 6, well, a full top 6. Now you have a player for each position in your top 6 because he's a left wing, and you put him on Larkin and Raymond. Now, granted, Jason Robertson's not perfect, right? He's not the greatest defensively, as well as he's not the fastest skater, but he can shoot. And you can get Dylan Larkin's got the pace. Lucas Raymond's got pace. Lucas Raymond, can dish the puck. I think that line can be a total package, and I think that swing immediately moves the needle from, you're 5 points out of making a playoff spot to you're there. You're right on the cusp, perennially.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's really a top 6 addition more than just like a strict top line. Obviously, that's where he would fit in, but you also solidify your second line with that, right? Like you have a guy who just scored 40 goals on your second line. That's depth, that's production. 39, I guess technically.
I knew what you meant.
You have Cat now, and presumably it would be Cat, Casper, and Kane, and they would be. What was that wrong?
It sounded like you said Catherine instead of Casper, but I could have misheard you.
Okay, well, I meant Casper. I said I don't think I
probably misheard
anyone
you
in my life Catherine, but Casper and Kane would then be your second line, and that would be a really productive, obviously, offensive line. And then you would hope that Catherine could then pick it up defensively up the middle, and I think that would be. Yeah, you'd really solidify that. And I've made my feelings on Robertson very well known, and I would do that trade in a heartbeat if I was the Wings. I think that deal that you have on the table is more than worth it for Detroit, yeah.
Now, the problem now is that you've traded for Robertson. That brings your cap down to $9.8 million remaining. Still plenty of cap to go around. You can still sign another impact player if need be, but you still have a lot more deficiencies left, and especially in the defensive core and in net as well. So how can the Red Wings address those deficiencies after making such a big move for a guy like Jason Robertson? Well, I'll tell you how. In this shooting for the moon scenario for the Red Wings offseason. Stay tuned to segment 2 of Lockdown Red Wings.
You know what you don't have to shoot for the moon for when you want a nutritious snack? I don't think that made any sense. Eat wonderful pistachios. Fantastic. If you're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, you can crack into that good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts on the market. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats. They'll keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, as you all know by now, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shelf, that satisfying crunch, well, the in-shell options are a classic favorite too. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are going over my off-season wish list and where I try and manipulate the cap to get everything that I want under the sun. Now, Scotty, we've got Jason Robertson. They do have to extend him, but Red Wings have the cap space to extend him after, hopefully before his contract's actually up, but he'll be an RFA at the end of it. You have 1 more year at this current cap hit. But they have other needs, too, right? We've talked about on defense. You have Simon Edvinsson and Moritz Seider, and that's about it. Your goaltending situation is not great. You have probably one of the worst tandems in the NHL right now with Cam Talbot and Peter Mrazek. Well, my next move kind of took a cue from the rumors percolating around the NHL, and that the Red Wings are interested in the goalie market. And in this scenario, Scotty, it finally happens. The Red Wings acquired John Gibson from the Anaheim Ducks. That's how you know.
7 years.
Right. And that's how you know this is fantasy, because that's never happening.
We've been talking about that potentially happening since, I think, before COVID.
But John Gibson is got 2 years left on his contract at a little over $6 million. It's not a cheap contract. He had a nice bounce-back year, albeit in a backup role behind Dustall. But Gibson had, I think, a 912 save percentage. He's only 31 years old, which means that for a goalie, he's still in his prime. And you can chalk up some of his poor performances in recent years as their starter due to the fact that the Anaheim Ducks were bad. He carried a lot of the workload and was actually really, really good for the Ducks while that team was getting bad, holding tight onto any playoff hopes because of him in a lot of those seasons. I think that it is still an upgrade to acquire John Gibson over either of the 2 goalies you have. Now, to make that work, though, you got to offload one of those 2 goalies, and you probably don't want to take on the full 6.625 or whatever he makes.
Yeah.
This is the one trade where I was totally guessing on what the value is. Not gonna lie, but I traded Gibson. Coming to Detroit is John Gibson with 25% retained. So I think that made his cap hit in this situation a 4.8 cap hit, because you had Anaheim retain 25%. They got the cap space to retain it. But because you're asking them to retain, you want to sweeten the pot a little bit in that deal. So I had a pick swap as well, where you get the Edmonton Oilers 5th that Anaheim owns. You give them, I believe, the Lightning's 4th round pick that you own in the same year. So it's a boost up in round. You're pick swapping. You're going to 5th round. They're getting your 4th round. And you're giving them Peter Mrazek and Jonathan Berggren. They just traded Trevor Zegras. They're going to need a little bit more skill. Jonathan Berggren obviously has skill and is a shooter, not to the level of Trevor Zegras. I'm not trying to say that, but he can add to their bottom six scoring. Probably would do better in a team like Anaheim that can give him more of an increased role at that. And you solve their backup goaltending issue by giving them Peter Mrazek. Both of those guys, it's the rights to Jonathan Berggren. Peter Mrazek only has 1 year left on his deal, so you can let him walk at the end of the thing. Because that's the other thing, is you're taking the extra year from Gibson, too. So they're getting off the cap a year earlier than you are. So I take that as like a plus for them as well. But that was a complete guess on what the value might be. At the end of the day, it is Gibson, Oilers' fifth that the Anaheim Ducks own, for Berggren, rights to Berggren, Peter Mrazek, and the Lightning's fourth that you own in this year's draft. Scotty, give me your thoughts.
I mean, I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't think it's like an egregious mock you have there. I think that the Ducks situation in general is wild, and obviously
I don't know what Verbeek's doing.
Yeah, the Zegras trade on Monday I thought was incredibly underwhelming, to put it nicely. I don't think that was a very good return at all. So who knows? Like, if they're truly just in, cap dump mode, they're not really paying anybody anyway, though. Like, you got to hit the floor. So I think, yeah, like, obviously from the Wings perspective, this would be fine. You would, in theory, improve in net a little bit. As we joked, you'd finally do something that's been rumored for like half a decade. But I think that maybe I'm just focusing too much on the Ducks perspective here, but like,
no, it's good perspective to have.
Well, no, it's one of those things where the Zegras move makes such little sense to me, unless they just hated each other, like Zegras in the front office, that like, I don't know what they even do. They've been rumored to trade Gibson for like 6 years. They're finally gonna do it now. They trade Zegras. They're finally gonna trade Gibson. I don't know. It's interesting because if they move on from him, like, yes, they're kind of doing this like full rebuild thing. They're gonna be the worst team in the NHL next year without Zegras and without Gibson. No,
they're gonna be the worst team in the NHL even with Gibson, because that Kreider and Trouba aren't it. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're not good. I'm not trying to like say that they're really good now, but like, at least you would have had like 24 Zegras and Gibson, who had a pretty solid year.
What's in it for them is that they get Berggren, who, you're trying to sell them on the upside. Again, our trash, their treasure. That doesn't work.
Zegras,
right. It doesn't work that often. No, I understand that. You're trying to sell them on that.
Berggren is literally older than Trevor Zegras.
And they get to upgrade on the draft board. So, and also they're out from underneath Gibson's contract, except for the 25% that they're retaining. But because Mrazek and Berggren, it's the rights to Berggren, you don't got to sign him, but I imagine they'd probably want to, because why would you accept the trade if you don't intend to sign him? But like, also Mrazek's contract's up at the end of the year, so like, you're out from underneath that 6 point. Not that they need the cap space, but it gives them a little bit more flexibility, because apparently they're going to take a run at Mitch Marner. So I know this was a stretch. I admit this was a stretch. I know it's not going to work. It probably won't work out. I didn't know what Gibson's value was. I don't know what his value is.
Zegras and Berggren are the same age, so whatever. Point still stands.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're both 24.
Oh yeah, that was
one's a March birthday, one's a July birthday.
They were one draft year apart. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I would do this from the Wings perspective and not even think twice about it. I just think they would want more assets for, because like,
what do you think the Ducks need?
Everything
to make this work.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, right. Like, I know that doesn't really help, but I think maybe more of a draft increase. Like basically they're doing this trade for a Hail Mary on Berggren and one round in the middle of the draft, which, like, isn't horrible, obviously, but like it is, their longtime goaltender that's under contract for the next couple of years.
So do you think if I switch the Lightning's 4th to the Red Wings 3rd, that at that point the Red Wings would have no 3rd-round pick in this draft because I've already clipped out the Lightning one, but if I go to the Red Wings 3rd-round pick, is that then enough?
Yeah, I think that's more in the range, probably. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, again, neither of us know what we're talking about in this situation.
No,
we're guessing. But
they
it's a good conversation to have
tomorrow. Right. Like I have no clue. They just traded Zegras for a bag of potato chips, but like
real.
You know what I mean? Like I have no clue. Maybe I'm overvaluing him, but yeah, I feel like I don't know. I was gonna say you don't really tear down your assets unless you're getting like the foundation for the next group that you want post rebuild, but like they didn't really do that with Zegras, so I don't know.
Okay, deal. Scotty, let's head to another break. When we return, I got more to get to. Not done with the trades, offloading contracts yet. By the way, up to $10.4 million remaining after the trade for John Gibson. So, because you offloaded Mrazek, so it's a little bit slight increase in your favor. Stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, we know Scotty is, golf on the green, I'm really bad at it, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, we got to move on from the Gibson trade. We spent a lot of time. Next trade, another fairly obvious one that's been rumored for a while. Cap dump of Vladimir Tarasenko. You find a suitor in the Chicago Blackhawks. You give them that Oilers 5th-round pick that you acquired in the trade for Gibson. You just flip it to Chicago. You give them Vladimir Tarasenko because Chicago is a team that could take a flyer, has the cap space to take a flyer on a guy like Tarasenko with just 1 year left to try and improve their culture and hopefully take their win total up a little bit more. Take the gamble that he could get a little bit better and get a pick in return. You're getting future considerations back. It's purely a cap dump trade, but you get Vladimir Tarasenko off your books.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. I actually think even more so than like the improved win total or, culture or anything, they would do that to then trade Tarasenko and
at
feed
the deadline,
him the puck, right? He'd be a top liner with Bedard on that team, and you could do that and then try to get him going, give him way more opportunities than he would have or will have in Detroit. And if he has a decent goal total at the deadline, then they flip him and they get a 5th for him for taking the salary, and then they get whatever they potentially flip him for there. So I think
and then they could potentially retain on that contract too at the deadline to help a team out that, is cap strapped and that upgrades that potential draft pick even higher. So yeah, I think that one's a pretty no-brainer. But of course, I think it's a no-brainer, but it hasn't happened. So clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about.
You have to actually, right? This is a hypothetical scenario where we know, quote unquote, that the Hawks want Tarasenko.
Right.
Like we
don't
know if any NHL team actually wants him at the moment.
Right.
So
all we know is Red Wings are shopping him, and there have been no takers yet. And they were shopping him at the deadline, and there were no takers. So next up, Scotty, comes the signings. The rest, the free agent signings to help fill out the rest of the roster. And I will throw up on the screen. Not throw up. I'm going to throw up. I have a way of making just badly timed pauses.
Throw up
I will throw up. All right, so we made the Patrick Kane signing. We made the Jason Robertson acquisition. We've offloaded Mrazek, brought in Gibson, and we've offloaded Tarasenko and Bergeron as well. This is another one where this is just, I want this player. He's number 1 on my wish list for defensemen. And now after offloading Tarasenko, you have $15 million in cap again. go out there and get Vladislav Gavrikov. He is projected to get $5.6 million across 4 years. You're going to have to overpay. I don't know what an overpay looks like to convince him to come here, because there's going to be other more desirable destinations for him. And I'm not even convinced that he's going to take the projection at 5.6 even feels low to me. But just based on that projection, I'm overpaying by $400,000 to try and convince him to come here. I don't know if that's enough to convince him of an overpay, but just in this situation, I'm overpaying for Vladislav Gavrikov to have him in your top pair defenseman with Moritz Seider, or on the second pair, and then to help shore up your top 4, because you do not have anyone outside of Edvinsson or Seider. You cool with that?
I love it.
All right. He's a guy who plays really good defense in your defensive zone, and he's also a guy who plays PK. 2 things you need desperately. You also see on here, I have Nicholas Perbix. After the buyout of Justin Holl, you did not have anyone on the right side, and I personally am not convinced ASP is going to be ready for the NHL level after, and granted, it was a 5-game sample size in the AHL, but you could see that there was still things that he needed to work on before he was ready to play with the big boys in the NHL. So I'm taking the route that I think ASP is probably going to need a year in the AHL, and after buying out Justin Holl, you have 1 right-shot defenseman in Moritz Seider that's in the NHL. So I was like, get Nicholas Perbix. He's a depth defenseman, a 3-year, $2.9 million deal, so you're paying him less than you were Justin Holl. You're paying him, and percentage-wise of the cap, that's even like with the cap rising, that 2.9 is even more less than what you were paying Justin Holl as well. That didn't really sound great coming off the tongue, but you get the picture.
It was
there.
More or less, yeah.
More or less, even more fewer. That's also not right. Sounds still wrong. But now you have a third pairing right side D-man. You're gonna have to try and keep, because I thought about Ekblad here, because you need a right shot D-man. But my reservation with Ekblad, not just with the injury history, as much as I love his physical style, is that eventually you are going to want ASP in your top 4, theoretically, if he develops into that way. And if you have Seider on an 8-year deal and you have Ekblad on a 7-year deal, eventually it's going to kind of block ASP. So I went with Gavrikov in this instance instead of Ekblad, just because this way Perbix isn't going to block anyone. He's a depth third pairing defenseman to make your third pairing better. This means Albert Johansson will likely have to play on the second pair, or you put Ben Sherratt on the right side of the second pair, which I really don't want to do, because I'm done with Ben Sherratt in the top 4. You put him on the third pair, which in my opinion makes that defense much better, just with Gavrikov on his own, but Perbix too still. You have Gustafsson who can play power play, he can slot in. I think that defensive core might not be the best in the world, but is a hell of a lot better than it was.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I like it all. Obviously, I think we're as you mentioned at the beginning, like kind of shooting for the moon on best case scenario. But I really like it. I'm wondering how does Marner fit in then?
Marner does not fit in. I don't think I want Marner to come here, right? And it's all
right. Dude.
We're shooting for the moon, right? I want Marner to come here, but I don't think Marner's coming here. I think you have a better chance at trading for Robertson than you do at signing Mitch Marner right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So after those 2 signings, Gavrikov and Perbix, you have $6.3 million in cap space. And this is when I realized, I traded away Berggren, and I traded away Danielson, and I traded away Tarasenko. We are a forward short. So I was like, who can I slot in the bottom 6 so that we have a full roster? And I just scoured the UFAs. I said, Anthony Beauvillier is projected to get a 3-year deal at $2.6 million. He is a decent middle 6 winger. He can take center faceoffs, doesn't do it a heck of a lot. Why not? I am perfectly okay with slotting Beauvillier with whatever anyone's preferred middle 6, bottom 6 winger is in this situation. Probably bottom 6 in this situation. I think he averaged 12 minutes a game, so bottom 6, third line basically. But if you don't like Beauvillier, we can do anyone else. But I figured with his analytics, he was a good fit for that Tarasenko hole, basically.
Sure, yeah, and that's even one where, if Soderblom continues to impress and moves, earns more minutes, it won't be like a big deal if he moves down to the fourth line.
Right. Any thoughts overall? Now that we're staring at the whole thing, and just so people know, you have about $2.3 million in cap space remaining after all of these moves.
You should be able to get Marner for that.
You should be able to get Marner for that. Well, that's the other thing. You see the report that Dallas is like going to try and get Marner, and if you're going to get Marner, then who are you going to move? Are you going to move on from Robertson then, dude? Like, I understand that this is absolutely a shooting for the moon, right? Just as the disclaimer at the beginning, I'll disclaimer again here at the end. Like, if one of these things happen, you trade for Robertson or you sign Gavrikov, I will be very happy. I don't expect all of these things to happen because it requires a lot of surgery to this roster. One of my big reservations, in hindsight when looking at all of this after I had done it, is the guys you have in the pipeline. Your Amadeus Lombardis, your MBNs, your ASPs, they will need to find their way onto the roster at some point. If you sign too many guys, even to shorter term deals, like Beauvillier's 3-year deal or Perbix's 3-year deal, that does create another guy that they have to compete for a roster spot for. And that's still what they got to do anyways. Yeah. But, you're always going to lean more towards the actual guy you have on NHL contract for a couple more years. I mean, that's also part of the reason why I don't have Kosa on the roster, even though I want him on the roster. Everything that Yzerman has said and all the reports that have leaked sounds like Kosa's not going to be in the NHL at the start of next season. I'm not banking on that, which is why I traded for Gibson. I don't know. My lesson here was being an NHL GM is very hard, and I would not make a very good one. But it was fun.
We knew that. We knew that final piece.
For sure. Do you have any final observations on all of this?
No, not really. I mean, as you mentioned, I think the one thing, even joking aside and kind of perfect scenario, whatever aside, is they have the space and the need to make a big time addition. That is, dare I say, a necessity, right? Whether that ends up being, again, they're not going to get Marner, but if that's who pops in your mind, or if you are, looking at Jason Robertson here and looking at a deal that could get done, et cetera, they have the room where that is something that is dang near required in order to take that next step this upcoming season, and then you figure out the rest, in whatever way you can. So I think that's really the biggest point that I agree with you on and want to drive home. So
yeah, this was a very fun exercise, but it's just you want to look at the likelihood of scenarios of these things happening. It's 0.0001%. But how happy would you be if you woke up on July 1st and all of a sudden it was just a flood of Red Wings making moves to get all these guys? It'd be pretty cool.
It would be cool. I'd be terrified if Brian Fisher was named GM, but I would be pretty pleased with the move.
Well, if Brian Fisher is GM, you got Jason Robertson and Vladislav Gavrikov, so I don't know. I think that's pretty cool.
I don't think that's how that works. I don't think you understand what goes into being a GM. You don't just get the point and go, "This is what I want," and then it happens. I don't think you're maybe short selling some other GMs, but it's I like it. We ball.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow reacting to the Hall of Fame inductions, and then Scotty is going to bring his own version of this on Thursday. Yeah, and then for Friday's episode, I think we're going to do a live react to the NHL draft. So that'll be obviously later in the day because the draft happens at 8, so it'll be closer to midnight when it comes out on Friday. But I wanted to give you a genuine reaction when we draft whomever we draft or trade the pick. Stay tuned. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.